second risk, Intel is now slowly trying to move in, but Intel does not have that much of a footprint in edge devices. And finally, we are going to talk about custom devices. So this is what people talk about, the most common question which is asked by people who are just starting into learning this, that, what's the difference between AI and ML and DL? And someone, very wisely, you will find this thing on the net. I also picked it up from the net, that AI is like, superset, and out of which a special part of AI is called ML. And, if you use, several layers, then, it becomes deep learning. I guess, you can better call anything as AI, or, just call it ML. Don't try to, distinguish too much between, is this ML or DL? I mean, it's all the same. The same question is like, asked by my students that, what is an embedded processor and what is a general purpose processor? And I tell them that, the yesterday's, your general purpose processor, or the processing power which it had, becomes an embedded processor of today. So let's not try to put any artificial boundaries, because boundaries are always very fuzzy. It keeps on changing. So there is something like this figure, you will see, but don't pay too much attention to it, because things are meant to change. Now, we come down to the machine learning, and machine learning idea, as I told you earlier, the idea had been around for a very long time, since 1960s. And the first Arthur Samuel said of machine learning that, the field of study that gives computers the ability to learn without being explicitly programmed. So this is like, just the way a child learns. That, a child, when it is born with no preconceived ideas or notion. A child has not seen a cat or a dog or a zebra, for that matter. And slowly a child learns. So how does that process take place? And, people have been trying for a while to mimic that process in hardware. And perceptron, which is now what has become like, an important ingredient of what we call as neural network, is one idea in that direction. So this is what machine learning is about, that, can we put in kind of human intelligence? Or if not human intelligence, then, maybe a little bit of intelligence in the machines or the devices which we have been using. Now, ML infrastructure or machine learning infrastructure can be divided into two major parts. The first part is called as learning, and second part is inference. So first of all, just like, a child, you need to teach your neural network by giving it several examples, and then, also showing it the answer so that, it can take a look at it, try to make some reason. I'm not going to go into the math part of it. All of you have seen neural networks, and all of you know that, there are weights assigned with every node. How to assign weights to that node probably is done using matrix multiplication type of basic fundamental mathematical algorithm. So those things are very much well known. So the training on neural network usually takes place in the cloud, because training parts usually takes a lot of time. Also, it uses a 32-bit floating point number, so its memory requirement is large. Second thing we have heard about, that you require a GPU. Also, everyone talks about NVIDIA, that you need NVIDIA processor to do any kind of neural network. So, let us ask ourselves that, why do we need a GPU? Why can't a CPU be sufficient? And, it's a very valid question. Well, I'm also going to pose that question a little later. But right now, we use GPU because GPUs are very good in doing matrix multiplication kind of mathematical process very quickly, because it has been designed that way. Now, matrix multiplication is an eminently parallelizable problem. So your GPU has got many cores, maybe 1,000 cores or more. And you can parallelize your matrix multiplication problem, give it to your GPU, and you get the answer. So if you want to make your neural network answer very quick, then you require a GPU. And more number crunching power you have, I mean, the bigger GPU you need. So if you want to do something really big and want to train, then you do require good hardware support. And hardware support is normally you would have Intel Xeon processor and some kind of high-powered NVIDIA GPU. You require a CPU to be a manager. It would talk to memories, it would do all kinds of administrative things. And GPU would be pulling the workload. That means it will be doing the number crunching, doing matrix multiplication and whatever. So that is supposed to be done in the cloud, as they say, because in cloud, you have this kind of infrastructure. You do that in the cloud. Then the second part is the inference. Inference is, okay, your neural network is trained. Now you take that trained neural network and then give it or ask it questions which it has not seen before. If it can answer that properly, like for example, let's again go back to our dog versus cat kind of question. Suppose if you have trained your neural network by showing them millions of pictures of different breeds of dogs and cats, and after a while you show it, say 50, 60, 70% of that total data set, you show it for training. And slowly your weights will be assigned, feature extraction will be done, weights will be assigned, and your neural networks become smart. So now how smart it has become or how accurate it has become, to know that you need to go for inference and say, okay, I will show you some pictures that you have not seen before. Can you figure out what is this? And then, if it answers that, then, you say, okay, my neural network is trained, it is working well, and the accuracy percentage is so much. Now, till now, even the inference part was done in the cloud. And that's where the problem arises. That, okay, I understand that the teaching part can be or should be done in the cloud because you do require a lot of resources, a lot of power. But how about inference? And inference, do you really require cloud infrastructure? So what are the problems? I mean, why not? Why not use cloud infrastructure? Because cloud infrastructure is very well established. So let us look at this problem. I'm worried about two things for inference. See, I have designed my autonomous car. I have designed an autonomous car, and there is a engine, which is, there is a neural network or a NPU or neural processing unit, which is sitting there, and it has to do all kinds of, it has to give me all kinds of advice. When I say me, means to the automobile, all kinds of advice that, these are the inputs coming to me. I've done some processing in it. So now this is the next step you have to take. If it has to go to cloud every time, even for inference, I'll be worried about two things. The first one is latency, because it takes finite amount of time to send my data or raw data to a cloud infrastructure, get it processed over there and send me the answer. Second problem which worries me is security, because as soon as I start broadcasting my data, which is going to the cloud, it becomes open to anyone intercepting those data signals and then, doing something to my car. So two reasons are really, really important that, now people are coming about the smart edge computing devices. So people say that, I'm okay if my training is done in the cloud, but I want my inference to be done locally. I hope everyone is with me till this point. Okay, So you want to have inference done on that means in situ, that means whether it is in your smartphone, whether it is in your car, whether it's a part of your pacemaker, whether it is your automatic attendance system, whatever. Second thing, which is also important and we have not yet addressed that, is like suppose if you do everything in the cloud, including inference, there are going to be, or there are billions of devices at the moment. And by 2035, there are going to be 1 trillion devices, which will be smart devices, or which will be using some form of machine learning. If all these devices has to send that data to the cloud and get it back, imagine the bandwidth which would be required. And I don't think we will have that much bandwidth at the moment. So there's going to be a bandwidth crunch if we don't come up with smart edge computing solutions. So now we have now understood the requirement that, okay, all my inference stuff should be done in situ. That means take a small board, and in that board, everything should be done. That board should be collecting data and then giving me the answer there and then. It should not require any cloud infrastructure. Okay, I agree. Now, what else do I require? I have fixed up my hardware. Now I need to look at what kind of neural network or machine learning algorithm will I use. Well, there are several of them available. Now the question is, which one should I use? I mean, there is CNN, there is like, DSCNN, there is RNN, LSTM, all kinds of neural networks available. And this is your neural network. I'm not going to go into any detail about this because you know all about this. You know about this weights which are being assigned in the hidden layer. What is backpropagation? I think if you are taking the course in AI or machine learning, and this is the first thing that you learned, so I will not go into it. But I will come into the edge device. So now I have fixed up my processor. Maybe it's an ARM processor, maybe it's a RISC-V processor. I have said, okay, this is the second beam which I have to use some kind of neural network. Then, of course, processor alone is not good enough, so I will have to use memory and other things. So now, what do we do? How do I come up with an edge solution? Now, in a little while, I'm going to talk about the work that, we have done. One of my students has recently done that work. That, he has taken various options which are available in the market, that is off-the-shelf solutions. When I say off-the-shelf solution means there are boards available like SparkFun Edge, there are STM boards, there is Raspberry Pi board, there's Arduino boards. So, I mean, these boards are available. Each board has a certain kind of processor. It has got certain amount of memory. And then you have got, on the second bin, you have got various types of neural networks. So then, you start thinking that I've got some application, which is either image classification or voice recognition or facial recognition. So there are these are the applications. You have got neural network and you have got hardware. So three things are there in front of you. So now the problem becomes interesting. Now, when I talk about machine learning on the edge or deep learning on the edge, I will be doing it on some kind of board. As I told you earlier, I may have Arduino board, I may have Raspberry Pi board, I may have STM based board or SparkFun Edge board or whatever. But the big thing which is out there is the power budget. That if I want to use something in, say, smart camera or smart surveillance system or keyword detection system or pattern training system, my power budget should be around between 1 to 10 milliwatt. It can't be beyond that. In other words, the whole system should work on a button cell. If I go on slightly higher thing, if I go to my mobile, where there's a voice and image recognition, my budget will be between say 1 to 10 watts. If I still want to go higher, say up to 10 watts, then probably image enhancement, I may have it in my TV or I may have it in my camera. And then beyond that, if I want to make a smart automobile, it is then my power budget may go up to 100 watt, because now you're putting your system in a car which has got a large battery, and it can afford to spend up to 100 watt. So here in edge computing devices, power becomes a guiding factor. No matter how good your solution is, no matter how accurate your solution is for inference, if it is using too much power, don't use it, or you can't use it. It is not going to be a commercial success. Just think about it. If your smart camera costs $400 because the software which you say, which are your, or the hardware which you are going to put in it, cost say $50, $60, people are not going to buy it. They would say that okay, this is too expensive. It is not going to be a commercial success. So this, always remember in your head that whatever we talk about, whatever smart edge computing system we talk about, we'll always talk about with the power perspective. So we will again and again come back to this power envelopes that, if I want to design smart camera, not more than 10 milliwatt. Smart phone and, some kind of image enhancement, like, we have beautify feature when we take a picture, or what we call it, AI enhanced picture in our mobile phone. Well, it shouldn't have budget more than 1 to 2 watts. And if you have something in your TV, maybe 10 watt and so on. So now we have talked about these budgets that, I've got budget, which is just 1 milliwatt. Now, we just talked about that, in cloud, I have to have Intel Xeon 5. And along with it, I need to have a GPU. But then I'm talking about using a board at the edge, which is like should not, by board itself should not take more than 10 milliwatts of power, and which should be running on a button cell. So what luxuries can I afford? I mean, let's just decide it here and now that I won't be able to afford NVIDIA GPU in this one, because it is too expensive and it is going to be an overkill. So first of all, do I need a CPU? Well, of course you need a CPU, because CPU is the heart of the whole problem, or the part of the whole board. You do require a CPU. Do you need a GPU? Or how about a DSP, digital signal processor? Do I need it? What if I don't have luxury of either GPU or DSP? Now, if you want to play something with Arduino board, that board may say, oh, sorry, if you want to buy a board which costs $5 to $10, I can't give you a GPU or DSP in it. So all I can afford to give you is a CPU. Will you be able to do inference using that? And to answer this question, again, we come back to the fundamental decision why we wanted GPU or DSP in the first place. And as I told you earlier, that if we require inference engine, or if we require a neural network, that it has got a lot of convolution, say for image classification problem, it would have a lot of convolution layers, which are required for.
Excuse me, sir.
Yes.
There is a question in the chat box. May I just read it out?
Yes, please.
Question is from one of the participants. Can federated learning be used in edge devices to conserve battery life?
Can you repeat that question, Ken?
Can federated learning be used in edge devices to conserve battery life? Federated learning.
Okay. Can you explain a little bit? Can that participant come live?
Sure. Sir, JC sir, you can come You can unmute yourself if you want and ask your question in a little more detail.
Hello. Yes.
Janmajaya sir, can you ask the question in little more detail? Dr. Bhatt wants to get a little more detail about the question. So let's continue. Maybe towards the end of this talk, we'll come back to this question.
Okay, fine.
Thank you.
So the question of using a GPU or DSP, we require because, as I told you earlier, that a typical neural network for the image classification problem consists of multiple layers of convolution based for feature extraction. And then, you have to have followed by fully connected layers for image classification. And these all requires a basic operation, which is a MAC type of operation. And to do it fast, you require either GPU or a DSP. But you may say that
sir, I think you've become muted. We're not able to hear you.
okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay, I got a message that host has muted everyone. So anyway, so we were talking about, I mean, I don't know since when I was muted. So let me just repeat what I said. That the main reason why we require GPU or DSP is that, the foundational problem is matrix multiplication or MAC type of problem. And to do that, we require either GPU or DSP because they are specifically designed to do those operations very quickly. But that doesn't mean that CPU can't do it. Of course, CPU won't be able to do it as efficiently as a DSP or a GPU. Now, if you are working on a shoestring budget, so suppose if you are trying to make a smart toaster or, smart, say, security camera, you know that, the whole product is going to sell for $20 or, $30. For that much amount of price, how much electronics can you use? And you can't afford the luxury of having a GPU or a DSP. So it is not absolutely necessary to have a GPU or a DSP. So you can take a hit in terms of your processing speed. So you will eventually get an answer. But then, you have to think that how soon you will get an answer. That means what would be the latency? If you are going to get an answer quickly, or, you can wait for 3-4 seconds. There are certain applications like toaster, 3-4 seconds doesn't mean anything. Whereas, if it is something like automobile, 3-4 seconds means a lot, you can get into an accident. So based on those things, you have to decide what hardware would you like to have in your system. So the question was asked that, can ARM architecture based processors can be the solution? Well, at the moment, all the boards which you can get commercially are ARM based boards for edge device. There are not many RISC-V based boards available in the market. So you have to stick to ARM based boards. The advantage of using ARM-based boards is it has got a very low megahertz, very high megahertz per milliwatt ratio. Or if you want to, people use it, this figure of merit, two ways. If it is megahertz per milliwatt, then it should be as high as possible. Or if it is milliwatt per megahertz, then it should be as low as possible. So that is the figure of merit, and ARM always held this position that it has got the best ratio. It has got a range of processor with a different processing speed. And if you look at the ARM class of processor, they had divided into three parts: the Cortex A series, Cortex R series, and Cortex M series. So Cortex M series are your microcontrollers. So it starts from Cortex M0, M0 plus, it goes to M3, M4, M7, M33, M55, and now very recently they have come with N55. So these are the Cortex microcontroller processor, and as the name suggests, they are microcontrollers. They are very cheap, extremely low power, and all the boards which you get commercially, which I just named to you, like STM or SparkFun Edge or Arduino or Raspberry Pi, they all have one or the other Cortex M-based boards. So these are the things, we initially, when I was working at ARM, Vikas Chandra was a good friend of mine. He was also working at ARM. Now he is in Facebook. But, he did this experiment. This was before releasing it to the public. And, they took various boards and they ran several experiments on it. But, those experiments was about the devices which required little intelligence. What that means is, well, you want a toaster which can decide the toast is made or not. You don't want that toaster to answer you when the world will end, or what is the solution of this complex partial differential equation. Well, your toaster has to be quote unquote little intelligent. Same thing with your washing machine or your microwave. So for that, your engine could be one of these boards which are freely available in the market, having one of these ARM processor cores. So what we did, I gave this problem to one of my master's students, and we were collaborating with ARM and Google. And at that time, the Google just came out with the newer version of, you all must be aware of TensorFlow, because TensorFlow, the Google has been pioneer in designing a framework for neural network called TensorFlow. So along with Caffe and PyTorch and many others, TensorFlow still is quite widely used. ARM collaborated with Google, saying that the developers are going to write their application using TensorFlow because that's what they are comfortable with. Now, once the application is written using TensorFlow framework, I want to download it on my small board, which is running with Cortex M4, M7, M33, M55, one of those processors. Now it may not have GPUs and DSPs and other things, and it may have very small memory footprint. It may have like 128K memory, it may have like 256K memory. We are not talking about your mobile phones, which has got like few GBs worth of memory, or your laptop or your desktop. Forget about server. So running on a very tight budget, I've got a low powered processor which is working along with a very tiny bit of memory, and it doesn't have support of a separate GPU. Now what do I do with this, or how do I make this work? So the solution which came out was a new framework called TensorFlow Lite for microprocessor. So the idea is this, that let us talk about CMSIS. So this is how it works. So you have got your Cortex-A based devices. So which are Cortex-A based devices? All your mobile phones have some sort of Cortex-A class processor. You know, we just talked about Samsung Galaxy 20 phones. And it has got A77 and A72 and A55 classes of processor. So if you are using Cortex-A processor where you have got abundant amount of memory, abundant amount of computing power, and you know you have got a separate GPU which is called a Mali processor, which is a specialized GPU. Then what you do is you write an application, you pass it through TensorFlow, Caffe, PyTorch, and there is a layer which is known as inference engine, which allows, as it says, that efficient translation of existing neural network frameworks to run them efficiently on a given processor of Cortex-A class without modification. So what it means is you don't have to worry about which processor you are writing the code. So ARM-NN is a layer which is provided by ARM. On top of it, you put any of your Tensor application written using TensorFlow framework, and it should run, right? So this is pretty obvious that, okay, my mobile phone will work. You know, it has got abundant amount of memory, great processing power. I don't have to worry too much. So that is fine. So this is, again, you know, it is edge device, but, you know, it's a high-end edge device. You want to talk about something which is low-end. So here, the low-end edge device is Cortex-M processor. So for that, as you can see here, the TensorFlow has been changed into TensorFlow Lite. And there is this layer called CMSIS neural network. CMSIS means Common Microcontroller Software Interface Standard. I mean, that has been created by ARM. And the whole reason for creating this CMSIS framework is that, you know, it is because of the ARM's business model. That, you know, ARM has got various processors like Cortex-M3, M5, and so on. And there are n number of companies which are making microcontrollers using those M4, M5, M7. Now, if there was no say supporting layer, then, you know, if I write a code for an NXP based microcontroller having Cortex M4, if I try to run it on, say, someone created by Renesas, again, it has got M4, but it has got its own microcontroller, then, you know, how do I port my code? It will be very difficult. So ARM came up with this CMSIS standard that if you have CMSIS layer, then porting of your programs would become very easy. All the hardware has to be conformal to CMSIS standard. And once it is conforming to CMSIS standard, then code written for one microcontroller would easily work for code written using other microcontroller. Now, this is very important that, you know, you're using TensorFlow Lite instead of TensorFlow. You're filtering through CMSIS neural network, which has got compute libraries and other things, you know, which are optimized for your Cortex-M processor, knowing that, you know, it has got limited amount of compute facility. Look at the footprint. If you do this inference, the core runtime fits in just 16 KB on ARM Cortex-M3. So it is occupying a very tiny memory. It is very different from using ARM neural network. You know, it has got its own advantages. It is very fast, and certain applications cannot be run on Cortex-M processor because, you know, it is kind of slow. But we are talking about edge devices running on very thin power and computing budget. So this is what is it for us, and this is something new. So we tried this out. And if you want to know about the CMSIS neural network, I mean, I have given this paper, which is written by the ARM team, where Vikas Chandra was one of the author. You can refer to it. It gives very good information regarding this. So some terms are defined here. Probably you know all this. You know what inference is, and you know what memory is. Mega operations is like number of operations in millions, how many operations are done, and what is latency, that is time taken by a particular development board to perform inference on a given input. So coming back to the my students' work, so I gave him three ideas. I want to do three things. One is I want to write an application which is doing fire detection. Second one is keyword detection. So like saying hello Alexa or hello Jim or hey Siri or whatever. And the final is the gesture recognition, what kind of gesture you're making. Now then, for each one, there are several neural networks which can be used. So as you can see, there are like 4 types of neural networks which can be used here. And then I gave him several boards that, okay, so their problem definition is this. I'm giving you some number of boards. I'm giving you some number of neural networks, and I'm giving you some numbers of applications. Now I want you to tell me, or I want to devise a kind of a system where I will give my budget of power, of latency, of computing power, and of processor speed. Based on this, you tell me which is the optimum solution for me. You understand the problem? I think the problem is very important even from the commercial point of view. You are designing a system. When you are designing a system, and if you are a startup person, you're not going to design everything from the scratch. And even for big companies like Samsung or Qualcomm, initially they don't go and buy things like get everything's manufactured, like they don't design ASIC for it. They take some of the off-the-shelf parts and create a system and try to study on it before they stand it for commercialization. So some number of boards, some number of neural networks and applications, and then there are matrix elements, which is accuracy, memory footprint, and finally millions of operations. That means computing power. And then you give me a user will define that this is my maximum amount of latency which I can tolerate. This is the maximum amount of power which I can tolerate. So answer should be coming up. So he did something like the depth-wise separable convolution. You all know about it. I don't want to go into too much detail. There is enough information available. But this is what happened. As you can see, this is a chart of accuracy versus memory footprint. And this is for fire detection problem. So fire detection problem is the camera is there. It is taking pictures every 5 seconds. You take that picture, and then your smart system has to say that whether there's a fire there or not. It should not be fooled by yellow color. Right? If the walls are painted yellow, it should not detect that as fire. So, you have to put in some kind of intelligence in it. So, for that particular system, he used various neural networks. Now, the boards which he used, I think he has given boards somewhere. The boards are defined later on. So, I'll tell you which boards were they. So he used 3 boards. First 2 boards used 2 different kinds of cameras. So first one, 2 boards were using RGB as well as grayscale camera, and the third board used only the grayscale camera. So as you can see, the CNN here is giving highest amount of accuracy, almost 85%, which is commercially acceptable. And memory footprint is very, very small, right? So you may say, okay, this is a great solution, for fire detection, I should go for that. I should be using CNN on it, and that is it. But this is not the whole story. Why this is not the whole story? Well, what about latency, right? If knowing whether the fire is there within, like, 1 millisecond is important to me, and if this, great solution which is giving me great accuracy with small memory footprint is taking 15 nanoseconds or 15 milliseconds as latency, it's no good for me. So this is giving you half information, that only accuracy versus memory. So if your memory is a major constraint, then this is great. If you think that accuracy is my main constraint, then this is half information is fine. So here, if someone looks at it, say, okay, DSCNN is second best for grayscale, not so great for RGB, and then there is MobileNet, and then there is DNN, both for grayscale and not so well for RGB, because accuracy percentages are really low. The second thing is millions of operations. That means processing power used versus memory. CNN, as you can see again, is using least amounts of memory operation. So you say, okay, CNN was great here also. That has got the highest accuracy at the lowest memory bandwidth. Then it has got is using lowest amount of operations, because more operations you have, more processing power it uses versus memory. So I mean, CNN still seems like a winner as opposed to your DSCNN or MobileNet or DNN. But then this comes the latency, and the three boards, as I told you, they used Arduino Nano 33 BLE Sense, then SparkFun Edge Apollo 3 Blue, and STM Disco. I mean, this was the fastest board. Now, when you look at it, I'm using, say, first looking the STM32F74. If you look at the latency, this is the latency for DSCNN. It is like 734 milliseconds. For MobileNet, it is only 198. So now, you have got this real problem that, what should I take it? Like, here, your MobileNet is doing something very fast, but it is using a lot of memory, though it is using less number of operations. And accuracy of my MobileNet is okay. So now, you will say, okay, not CNN, but MobileNet is good for me, because, you have got three different matrices and three different points. So this work, we are going to enhance and, take it forward to bringing up a kind of a intelligent system which uses the board for a person who wants to design a machine learning system. And, he just has to say, this is my requirement, this is my budget for maximum tolerance for latency, maximum tolerance for operations. That means the processor speed. This is the tolerance for memory footprint. And this is the tolerance for accuracy. You tell me the best fit. Which board should I use? And which neural network should I use? So this is going to be the problem. Same thing he did for keyword detection. Once again, accuracy versus memory usage. Millions of operations. That means this is basically processing power versus memory. And this is latency, which one you want to use. So again, you can come up with this, and again, this gesture recognition, accuracy, memory, and millions of operation, which one you want to use. And then again, you want to do calculation for latency also. So now, you have got all the information you need. You decide, or you help someone else decide that what kind of solution or what kind of board and what kind of neural network is acceptable to them for a particular kind of application. Now, very recently, ARM has come up with something which is known as Helium technology. I've been following that since last year. And this ARM Helium technology is something, which is falling somewhere between, your till now, what we have talked about is known as a shoestring operation. The boards are not very expensive, and still you get systems which are slightly intelligent, which can do some kind of keyword detection. And keyword detection is like, all it needs to know that, know the keyword like Siri, Alexa, or start, stop, on, off. One of these things it should know. But, the problem is that this system has to stay on all the time, right? Because Alexa has to listen to you all the time. And, for that reason, it cannot take up too much power. Or your system which you are designing, a smart system, say a smart switch, where you say on, the light will turn on. When you say off, the light will turn off. So 2 keywords are to be detected, and it has to stay all the time. And for that, it has to use very little power. So these were the things which are designed on shoestring budget in terms of actual amount of money, power, and computing speed. Now we are going a step higher. If you want to go for a step higher and say go and put it into as a solution into your mobile phone, which has got higher power budget of say 1 watt to 4 watts, then you can use this ARM Helium technology. So what it has got is this. It has got ARM Cortex M55 processor. Again, it is an M class processor, but it's a new thing. But it has got Ethos U55 micro NPU. So neural processing unit. So then, again, I asked people that, I kept on asking ARM people, goading them, that, how different it is. Fundamentally, DSP is the same architecture, or, so what is different in NPU? Is it like some very different hardware or very different algorithm? After some humming and hooing, it comes down that, it is almost the same thing, but, it's a new buzzword which has come in. So neural processing unit is a new thing. Okay, fine. So we agree with that. Of course, there are modifications, but it is more or less the same thing because your algorithms don't change. You have to do matrix multiplication. So you have to do matrix multiplication, whether DSP also has got thing for it. GPU also has some hardware for it. And same thing with NPU. But because of the advent of AI, there is so much interest in neural processing unit because people are coming out with slightly newer algorithm to do your matrix multiplication, either increase its performance or reduce the power. Because usually both things don't go hand in hand. If you try to increase the performance, then naturally power would blow up. Or if you try to reduce the power, then performance would also shrink. So people are, in fact, we had Jaswinder Ahuja in one of our conferences a few days ago. And he said that there are 150 companies that he knows of. They are into business of developing an NPU solution, right? 150 companies. And it can work with RISC-V based systems. And you can connect your NPU, their NPU with it, and get faster things. So this is Cortex M processor, and then there is M55. So naturally, the result, your latency would reduce much more. So you will not get large latencies, which you are getting in terms of like 160 millisecond or 124 millisecond. It would be terms of few milliseconds in single digits. So this is what is out there in the market. The boards are not there yet, but if you want to do experiment on something, you can use this kind of board also. And finally, since there is not much time left, I was told to wrap up by 10:45 so that there is finish by 10:40 or so that you can ask questions because there is another inauguration at 11. So I will go a little fast. Now we decided to build something. In fact, this is something we built 4 years ago with the help of Qualcomm. And this is what we built for this application, right? This is power budget. So we used it for something which is 60 to 100 watts. But if I have got that much power budget, can I design a framework for doing AI solution? So now this problem is still ongoing, and we are working on it. So it uses a cluster computing kind of thing. So let me go through it very quickly. So we took 6 Snapdragon boards. So basically they were development boards for phones. And at that time, they didn't have Linux on it. They had Android. So we worked with Qualcomm and Lenovo and ported Linux on these boards. So what we decided was this, that you would require a lot of computing power if you want to do, say, 360-degree camera view. And or there'll be cameras on, say, 6 sides, and the images would be captured, and then you want to do a seamless 360-degree view. So what we did was to create a supporting framework or a backbone for that. We took 6 boards. Each board has a Krait processor, which was like a generation behind Scorpion. So the Krait had, like, the highest speed was 1.7 gigahertz. So each processor had 4 cores, and there were 6 boards, so like 24 cores were there. And the whole idea was that each board would have a camera. It would do some processing from the camera. It would also do the stitching of the work. You'll make one processor or one board as a master board and other boards as a slave boards. Then what we decided was that each board can use all 4 cores of its own when it is busy. When that particular board is not busy, it can put all its core in a line saying, okay, these are my cores ready to be a slave for some processor board which wants some work to be done. So this is the whole idea of parallel processing and distributed computing together. So we took these boards and we put cameras on them. And after that, the stitching work was taking place. But the advantage was that each one, the board, suppose there is no feature of interest in a camera image taken by one particular board, then it would say, okay, there's nothing of interest. I don't have any work to do. I will put 4 of my cores for, say, I'm donating 4 cores for some other board, any one of these boards, which wants to do some heavy duty work because they have figured out there is a kind of a region of interest they want to take a look at. So that particular board will take up this 4 cores from the board which is sitting idle, and would look at other boards. So say, okay, now total 16 cores are idle. It will distribute the work to 16 cores and get the answer. And this is what, to find out the raw computing power, we did the HPL benchmark. That suppose benchmarks are important because someone wants to know that how powerful is your cluster. And then we found out that with 6 boards we can go up to 17 gigaflops. So it is almost like a server, which is like a high-powered server. And what was the cost? Each board was costing only $75, right? So if you 75 multiplied by 6 is like around $500. So in $500 you get a mini server kind of thing, which is giving you a peak performance of 17 gigaflops. I want to give you a back of the envelope calculation. If you say that all the RISC processors do 1 operation per cycle, so 2 gigahertz processor will do 2 gigaflops of operation per second. Here, together, they are giving me 17 gigaflops. And so if you take an application, parallelize it, and matrix application, as are eminently parallelizable, then you get a performance which is tremendous. So this is what we got. We are using 57 watts of peak power, 44 watts of average power, and this is what the product finally looked like. Now, before I end, there are certain things I would like to tell you. I could not expand on it because of dearth of time. that right now the neural processing chips which people are designing, they're also putting FPGA in it. Why they're putting FPGA? Because the neural network architecture is changing. Like, there CNN is there, and then DSCNN came, and some new flavor would come, and I'm very sure newer and newer version would keep on coming. Now you can't put the quote unquote the hardware version of any of this neural network in your processor. Why? Because it may become obsolete after a while, and you have to throw away your hardware. So now they are providing with FPGA. It is much faster than doing that thing, implementing it in software. Instead of that, you put it in FPGA, which is a better solution than doing it in software, or a cheaper solution than putting it in ASIC. So FPGA has become a huge thing. And we are also experimenting with it. And you connect, you all know that doing a program and executing in software on a given processor takes much more time than if you care to write that program in HDL and put it on an FPGA and then connect it to your processor, and then it would give you much better speed. So FPGA is becoming integral part of it. The second question which comes to our mind is, can we do training and inference on the same platform? And the answer is slowly coming down as yes. Previously, the voice which was saying yes was low. Now, people are becoming more and more confident, say, okay, you can do teaching or training and inference on the same board, which is like, that is what we want. We don't want a solution, which is going to the cloud and things are getting done. We don't want to use very high powered thing. We want everything distributed so that, bandwidth is not unnecessarily used up. So we expect prevalence of some kind of FPGA plus CPU plus GPU combination. And this GPU or a DSP may or may not be there, or FPGA may or may not be there, depending on what budget you have. If you're totally shoestring budget, if you're doing something from Toaster, well, you won't have FPGA and you won't have GPU. So still there are too many models, too many frameworks, and FPGA might be the best solution. But I urge all of you to concentrate on doing something on the edge devices, because I very strongly feel that that is the future for making our world smarter. And there are n number of problems. For example, if you want to do a medical diagnosis thing, if your medical diagnosis thing, if it is a self-contained unit, means if it doesn't, like, for example, if you want to do some, say, breast cancer recognition or tumor recognition, you don't want it to go to the cloud and come back and give you the answer, because in villages, you may not have good connectivity. So everything has to be done on a board. So for a country like India, very much so, we require a kind of edge solution. Everything is contained on a board, low latency, low power, and almost no bandwidth usage. So with that, I thank you very much, and I'm open to questions if you have any.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mustak, for that wonderful talk. Participants,
Other needs to turn off the mic. Just the speaker should keep it on.
Good morning, sir.
Yes, please go ahead, madam.
Yeah, sir, actually, I have one doubt, sir. For GAN network, is it necessary we should have GPU, or as you said, any other DSP processor or anything can be used, sir?
We have done some experiments on few neural networks. We have found out that in some, see, GPU, if you want to do things very fast, then GPU is must. More powerful GPU you have, your answer would be quicker. So if you ask me the question that, is GPU a must or a DSP will do, then, my counter question would be how fast you want the answer. What is the latency you are, that the latency that is acceptable to you. So it is not that, if you don't have GPU and if you have DSP, then, the problem will not be solved. The whole dependence would be how much latency you are able to accept.
Okay.
So you can even do without DSP and GPU and do it only on CPU, on a very small CPU, provided the latency is acceptable to you.
Okay. So actually, I tried. It went on up to so many hours for running. That is why I thought of putting this question, because very elaborately we were talking about this speed of operation and memory requirement. That is why I posted this question, sir.
Right. So I think then, you have to increase either your memory budget or, increase your processor strength.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, madam. Thank you, sir. Any other questions? Janmeja, sir, you had a question
Right.
earlier on.
Is he there in the meeting? Dr. Janamejaya?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear the question.
Are there any other participants if you have any questions?
Ask them to have the doubts here. They are telling in WhatsApp they want to send. I request participants to post doubts here. If there are more number of clarification, then we'll enable the WhatsApp group.
Okay, so one last thing, by the time the participants can think of a question. We are planning to design a recommendation system, as I told you, which would be a grandfather or, overall thing. We have already done it for selecting infrastructure in the cloud. It's a machine learning based solution that, for a given application, for given hardware, you have made several models, and then without actually executing a particular application, we can say that, for a particular kind of processor and particular amount of memory, this is the infrastructure you need in the cloud. We are trying to do the same thing. The only thing is that the boards are changing very rapidly, and that, the solution which you prepare may become obsolete very soon. But, we are quickly trying to do it and, make it dynamic, that, all you need to do is just put in processor, memory, footprint, application, and type of neural network you want to use, and you should get the answer without actually doing the experiment. So that is the final product which we are soon going to come out with.
Thank you. If there are no other questions, we will.
Okay, so if there are no questions, then probably we should stop at this point.
Yes, sir. I think we have completed these things.
Okay, so thank you very much. Once again, thanks to the MSRIT Institute and all its professors, including Professor Anandi. It has been a privilege to talk to you. And if you have any question, do write to me on my DICT ID, amit_bhatt@dict.ac.in. I would be happy to talk with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. On behalf of the participants and the organizers, thank you very much for that very informative talk. We will definitely get in touch with you with more queries.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Participants, thank you. We will end this meeting now. Please join the inaugural session from AICTE at 11 o'clock. You can join now. And then we will start our session again at 11:45 sharp. Thank you.